Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. The topic is on a chatbot to address SAP vendor invoice status queries. We call it Velocious. Welcome to one and all. We'll start with this webinar now, and it'll be of 30 minutes. So, first, we'll go through a few slides just to set the context, and I'll give you an overview of the chatbot, after which my colleague Jaideep will take you through a short demo of the same. So the topic for today is I'll just take a few slides to introduce Avaali, and we'll go through some trends, some factors based on some research about the factors contributing to the poor supplier relationships. Then we'll talk about what is the need of the hour. Then we'll talk about Velocious, what it can do, what are the key features and advantages, and then we'll follow it up with a system demo. So my name is Naveen Prabhakar. I lead the pre-sales for Avaali, and joining me today is also Jaideep. He's the solution architect for Avaali Solutions. He'll be taking us through the demo of the system today. As Avaali, we are specialists in enterprise information management. We are headquartered in Bangalore, and we have a subsidiary in Singapore and Dubai, customers worldwide. We have about 70 specialists in enterprise information management, spanning 300 plus man years of experience with both functional and technical knowledge on various areas and domain. We are a trade member with Association of Image and Information Management, which is one of the oldest or the oldest forum for information management. We are partnered with the best of the breed vendors like SAP, OpenText, Kofax, Blackline, Canto, etc. to cater to the enterprise information management needs. And what we do is starting from advisory services to evaluation of various technology components to implementation to support. We cater to end-to-end requirements of anything related to enterprise information management, digital strategy, shared service center deployment, etc. What differentiates us is that we are specialized on this enterprise information management. This is the only area which we focus on, and we do nothing else. We have over 50 implementations in large marquee enterprises around the world, and we have rich understanding on this area, both at technical and functional level. So as I was talking about the customers, we have over 50 projects in mid to large enterprises. These are a few select customers, where we have done various implementations with respect to, automating AP process, automating AR process, enterprise content management, archiving, customer communication management, etc. So let's look at some research figures and what are the top factors contributing to poor suppliers relationships. So from various research, we find that there are a lot of inherent problems or hidden problems when it comes to the communications with suppliers. Whenever we are talking about invoice, PO and invoices, there are a lot of to and fro which happens with the suppliers, and unless we cater to them in time and with proper status responses, the supplier relation tend to get a bit murky, and it will affect the supplier relationships. So, according to a recent research from Paystream Advisors, we see that around 30% of the customer's time is spent on answering to queries from suppliers. So this could be the communication over telephone, on emails, searching through the response, statuses, The status is again, could be on your system, could be on email, etc., etc. So this leads to loss of productivity for the APT, and it's a big pain for area for enterprises to handle such routine queries. So leading enterprises are looking for a solution to automate this response for these queries via latest technologies. Now, what is the need of the hour? So one is faster resolution of queries. Okay. So when we say fast, it's almost instant on a real-time basis. Customers would be wanting to know the status now, right? So second is anytime, anywhere. I mean, it should be 24/7 availability for the query resolutions. The third most important point is a seamless interface for the suppliers. So if there is no seamless interface for the suppliers, they would again tend to pick up the phone or email. So keeping these in mind, what we have come up is a fantastic chatbot called Velocious. So we have developed this ground up based on rule-based natural language query processing. And what it does is that we can use this to communicate with vendors, or rather vendors can use this to communicate with us to know the status updates of the invoices. And if they can also use it to submit the invoices through the chatbot itself, without having to go through any other process. So what we have done is, we have used Azure-based framework for the bot service, which can connect to your ECC system. So in the ECC system, it could be that you already use any of the API automation solutions, like maybe Cofax ReadSoft or OpenText Vendor Invoice Management, etc. Or it could be that you're not using any of the API automation system. Still, we can use the chatbot. So what the chatbot does is, the left-hand side, the users log into the web chat window of the chatbot. We use some APIs to, call our bot service, which in turn connects with your ECC on real time to give the status back to the vendor. So these are the key features of Velocious. There are a lot more in detail. The key features are, one is the vendors can register themselves without any intervention, without having to go through a registration process, lengthier one. They can maintain the users themselves, and like changing a password, updating address, etc. There's a complete audit trail for this. And then the status update, they can obtain the status update instantly for PO based invoices, non PO based invoices, etc., anytime, anywhere. And also it can, we have various other options, for example, invoice status based on a date range, that can be done. And they can also upload the invoices right from their chat window itself. Now, what are the advantages? As you already see that they can chat anytime, anywhere. We need not necessarily tend to them, be available on phone or email and respond to them. They can do it themselves. They can just log into the chat window and get the invoice status immediately. It's very efficient to use this, as we don't have to be there, and the customers AP processing team can focus on many other activities, and customers can get the live status updates. It's very reliable because everything is automated, and what you see is what you get. I mean, whatever is in the system will be reflected through the status. So there's very little scope for human error. and it is very fast. As we humans tend to take some time to go through the system, go through the emails, whatever, and to respond. This can instantly go into the system and get back the response for the vendor. So just before we go ahead with the demo, there's a chat window in this webinar where you can ask the questions. So you can start asking the questions right away if you have any, and we would respond to them once after the demo. So with this, I'll hand it over to Jaideep for the demo of the chatbot.
Thanks, Naveen. Thanks for setting me up. Let me just quickly switch screens and get to the point where we can demonstrate the solution as such. I'm hoping you all can see the screen as it is right now. Just give me a couple of seconds while it all loads up onto your desktops, right? Okay, so to begin with, this is the landing page of the solution altogether, and you can see our logo in here. This pretty much connects to our the training and demo environment within our landscape here in Avaali. So this landing page is designed to be customizable. I mean, you can add your own logo, you can connect it with your existing website, have chat window as a hover with a hover mechanism frame integrated to your existing website itself, where the vendors can log in. So to begin with, what I'll do is I'll click on chat. So it says my name is Velocious, I'm a chatbot, and I'm here to help you with your invoice related queries, right? So what I do here to initiate a conversation with the chatbot, I'd start with saying hi. So what I'm doing here is to invoke a session with the chatbot where the connectivity is established between the chatbot and the system in the backend, which fetches the details from the SAP system directly, right? So what is there in the SAP system for us to fetch? To begin with, we have the vendor master. Vendor master contains information about the vendor ID, vendor number, vendor email ID, and all these things, the contact information about the vendor. So vendor is, assuming that vendor is already onboarded, and it has information about how to communicate with the vendor in terms of his email ID, website, phone number, and all that, right? So we have two options here to register the vendor to work with chatbot, right? So let me start with register. So when I register, what happens is it asks me for my vendor number, and I'll just type in the vendor number here and say register. So what exactly happens here is that it's just going and validating if the account exists. So my vendor number is 200, the account is already created, it's asking me to log in. So to log in, I have an option to work with the OTP. So what happens here? So it'll just validate the vendor number again, ask me for a vendor alternate email ID if there is one, so that I can communicate it to an alternate email ID and have a designated user work with us as well. But I just don't need to do that right away because I want it on my email ID. So I'll just say generate OTP. So internally, it generates an OTP and sends it to my email ID, right? So if I look at my email ID here, I have a password. So I'll pick up the password, go back to the screen, and I log in. So I have established a session to connect with the SAP system for all the invoice status or invoice related queries that I have with me as a vendor to Avaali, right? So I have multiple options here. As you can see on the screen, I have invoice status, PO based invoice status. I can also check for non-PO based invoice status. And I don't really have the invoice number. Just in case if I don't really have the invoice numbers, I can work with the date filter also, wherein I'll give the starting and ending date, and with which it will fetch the number of invoices which have been uploaded onto the system over a period of time against my vendor number, of course. So I also have create invoice. Well, let's go one step at a time. So to begin with, invoice status PO based. So let me pick up a PO based invoice number. So usually invoices are bearing a number which is unique to their own environment, but inside the SAP system it's all PO based, right? So PO for us is always unique. So I take two inputs, PO number and invoice number. I say invoice search. So it's looking at the invoice mechanism in the backend of the SAP system, and fetching me the invoice status, where work cycle is the invoice status that's actually updated in the system. And this is this is the status description that's associated with the invoice status, which says it's inside the workflow and waiting for approval. Certain sets of approval that might be a part of your invoice processing sequence itself. So it's asking me if I would wish to continue. I would say yes. It's going to fetch me for another PO number. So I have another PO number. Let's see what's the status of this PO number. It's just a white space. So I'm going to search for this status of this PO number as well. It says invoice status is in process and waiting for posting. So it's moved on in the work cycle. I mean, this is a different invoice, of course, but this is in a different status altogether. So this status is live, right? It's actually picking from the content in the SAP system and bringing it to the vendor who's chatting for his reference. So it currently states that this invoice is in process and it's waiting to be posted. So it's asking me if I wish to continue. Okay, I'll say yes. Okay, so let's say I would enter a wrong PO number, a wrong invoice reference number of sorts. Say invoice. This is just to demonstrate how the error handling happens. So if you can see on the screen, it says it gives me a status message saying that the vendor number for the vendor 200, invoice number and the PO number that was just drafted in, it does not exist, and it posts me with a few other options, wherein it suggests that I search by amount or just go back and continue with the previous options. Right? Let me demonstrate this functionality as well. Okay, so let's see how many invoices are there with the value 200 as an amount. Okay, so when I search by amount, it's again querying the database, fetching the invoice list. So if you can see on the screen, it is about 5 invoices listed here on the screen. But if there are more invoices, what generally happens is that an email is automatically triggered from the system to my mailbox saying that, apart from this 5, there are other invoices also which are close to the amount that I've just keyed in, and gives me the status of all those invoices as well. So you can see the invoice number and the status of the invoice. Some say in process, posted, work cycle, and all that. So these are the different statuses within the invoice. Okay, so let's see if there is an email that's giving me the list of invoices. Yes, here it is. So there are multiple invoices that are associated with my vendor number, and it has in various stages of processing. So if you can say the total number of invoices is about 200 altogether. This is the list of invoices for the amount 200, which are listed in my email. Now this can be configured to be formatted in a way that it would be required for the end user. But right now it is just plain simple in terms of line-based architecture. So I'm just going to go back for other options to search. We just did invoice status via PO-based invoices. Now let's do it for non-PO-based invoices, wherein there's no PO number associated with the invoice. We just need the invoice reference number. So let me just fetch one invoice reference number. So if I say search by invoice, it's giving me the status as waiting for post, right? So this again, what we intend to demonstrate here is that an invoice in any accounts payable department might land up with a PO number or without a PO number. So independent of that, we are able to fetch the invoice status from the SAP system and display it to the user. So I have another example for non-PO based invoices. Let me check that as well. Let's say yes. And here's the invoice number, and it gives me this particular invoice is in work cycle. It's waiting for approval again. So now, okay, let's just get back to the previous menu and work with other option that we have in terms of searching the invoices based on dates, right? So let's start with 1/2018, and today is what, 29, right? 29/3/2018. So I'm going to hit search. So what this is doing is basically establishing a filter and giving me a list of invoices between the two date ranges that I just gave. So starting from Jan 2018 to till today. So as I said, there's a limitation that we've enabled just to ensure that this doesn't scroll up and give you all the information in a heap. So we've listed about 5 invoices here, and the rest would actually be emailed to you, which I just demonstrated earlier. I think the email is here, so let's just quickly go and check. So it's saying invoices between 1/1/2008 and 29/3/2008, between 12 a.m. to 12 a.m. and between the date ranges. So I've got so many invoices, right? So it's listing all the invoices that I have associated with my vendor number in the SAP system and bringing about it to my email. So this gives me a confidence in terms of all the records that are associated with the system and all the ones that are queued up for payment and things like that. So this can help a vendor to identify what kind of invoices are stuck, what kind of invoices are processed and paid and things like that. Okay, so there's one last option that I would want to demonstrate. So here we say create invoice, right? So here what we're trying to demonstrate is to utilize the feature of sharing an invoice copy, a supporting document of the existing business transaction that you might have with the buyer via the chatbot here itself. So this will utilize the existing flow of getting an input from the external systems, like an email with which the vendor would share his invoice to the company. So I'm just going to demonstrate how this works. So it's asking me for a PO number and an invoice reference number. So let me pick up the PO number that I had earlier and the invoice number associated with that PO. I'd say create invoice. So it's going to invoke another dialog saying to upload invoice, I need to go to this location and then upload invoices here. So let me choose certain files that are on my desktop. Okay, so I just uploaded this. So it's actually taking this document that I just uploaded to the system and queuing it up for further processing. So basically what happens if you have an AP solution, it goes through the OCR engine and basically archive first, goes through the OCR engine. Basically the email channel which will support the invoice processing itself altogether. So here it says it's telling me that the upload is successful and I can close the form. So this initiates the whole process of invoice processing, and further updates can be obtained for the invoice after it enters the queue and it proceeds with the processing. So this is pretty much I have in terms of the chatbot as a solution. So I can exit the chatbot at any point of time, but in case if you have any questions, I can take that up right away. Okay, we have a few questions. So let's start with first question. Will the chatbot work without any AP automation solution? Yes, it does. So what we've done, or the way we've designed chatbot, is to have it integrated with the existing SAP solution itself, the base solution, wherein invoice statuses are queued and updated and verified. So it can work without the AP the automation solution also. If you look at it, AP automation solution does certain things in terms of invoice processing, and chatbot connects to the part where the invoices are posted, which goes to the next level. Where the invoices are ready for payment. So we query our information from that state. Since that state is quite independent of any of the AP automation solution, it will work without any AP automation solutions in your existing system.
Only thing is, without AP automations, the number of statuses may be limited.
Yeah.
With AP automation, the statuses will be more clear. So
right.
There's one more question. The question is it a on-premise or
cloud-based
and also how can the vendors access this chatbot?
Okay, it's a cloud-based solution. So basically, what happens here is that we are using Microsoft Bot Framework for as a base for this solution. So the Bot Framework is designed to connect with any of the SAP systems that we designated to, and it uses Bot Framework, rule-based NLQ ability of Bot Framework, Microsoft Bot Framework, to establish the solution as such. And how does it connect?
How can the vendors use
Okay,
this?
how can the vendors use it? So as as a company or as an organization, what we can do is have this solution or a landing page or a link for the solution associated with your existing web page, which can be accessed by your vendors. Now, the only prerequisite here is for the vendor's master data to be updated on the SAP system, right? So just like I demonstrated the registration process, you need to be onboarded, as in vendor master should be updated with the vendor details in terms of his vendor number and the communication ID that, for instance, email ID that has to be updated with the master database from which we would derive the vendor information and then have him registered with the chatbot itself. So this can continue over a period of time until the master data is maintained to the next set of sequences.
Okay. So there is a question about how much does it cost and how much time it takes to implement. So the cost can be arrived at after discussing the requirements with you. So we can take this offline. And how much time? It's pretty fast to implement.
Yeah.
I think it's around 2 to 3 weeks. We can deploy it completely and up and running.
There's a question around audit trail and history of queries. So what happens in the system is that every transaction or every interaction with the bot and the end user is recorded and then put in place in its own database. So whenever the chat is concluded, a copy of the chat response or requests or interactions is sent over an email to the registered email ID, and you can access the audit log from your email also. While this is there, chatbot by itself will also maintain a copy of the audit log over a period of time, and it is cleared off based on the accumulation process. I mean, there are regular housekeeping activities that would go on the system. So, but it would still maintain it for about a period of 3 months for now.
Okay, so there's one more question. What happened to duplicate upload of invoice? What happens to the duplicate upload of invoice? So if you have a AP automation solution, how it works is exactly same. When you scan or take a invoice through email channel. So the validations based on the exception for duplicate invoice will be followed,
Right.
and it will work the same way exactly how it works in your API automation solution.
So that's more of an API automation solutions ability, isn't it? So any duplicate upload of invoices will be filtered, handled, and exceptions will be taken care of by the API automation solution itself. I mean, it's not something that the bot that we are demonstrating would change. But anyway, it would integrate with the API automation solution to fetch the details in terms of invoice statuses. That's all.
So the next question is uploaded invoice will be processed with Vim in brackets OCR and further workflow for payment. Yes, it is true for open text vendor invoice management and also Kofax ReadSoft or any other AP automation solution. So what we are doing here is once the invoice is uploaded, it will be taken as an input channel for the invoice processing. So the invoice processing whole process will be same as it is with any paper-based invoice or email-based invoice. So it will go through the OCR and all the exception handling, approvals, everything as per your configuration.
Who are the existing customers?
We do have a few customers, and we are in talks with a few customers, for implementation. But I think we'll take it offline with the person who has asked this question.
Arriba, does this work?
So does this work with Arriba? Can you please provide more information on this question, detailed, because we need to see how what exactly you mean by does it work with Ariba, because Ariba you can do a lot of things already, but again once it is through Ariba, we assume that all the SAP invoice processing will be done within SAP. So could you please elaborate on this question?
Well, I assume what he would wish to ask, or what this question would revolve around, is that Ariba is an automation solution. If Ariba is used as an automation solution, then it would update the invoice status and post it inside SAP itself, right? So we access the same namespace as SAP or Ariba uses, and then where the invoice comes into the picture. I mean, independent of any AP automation solutions in the background, the invoice status is still in SAP, right? So we pick that up from SAP and demonstrate it here. So that's absolutely fine, I believe, independent of the existing automation solutions.
Okay.
Any other languages? Unfortunately, as at present, we have it working only with English, as in it's tested thoroughly only with English. But with any, I mean, technically speaking, it's possible to have it to be working with any other languages like German or French, provided if the operating system base is supporting the language. But again, that's a work in progress. It's not tested thoroughly, so it's still not out of the box yet.
Okay, the next question is, what about SAP HANA integration with this chatbot? Definitely yes. So the important thing there is, whether we talk of Suite on HANA or S4 HANA, the base system, if we are using AP automation, say for example, OpenText Vim, that should support S4 HANA, which it does, and we can also, talk to SAP HANA.
Right, pretty much.
All right.
Awesome. So any other questions that you folks might have in mind?
I think this is the list as of now. So if you have any more questions, please do drop in a note. We'll be happy to answer, and we can take offline discussions as well. All right. So if there are no more questions, we can conclude the sessions. Thanks everyone for joining today's webinar. We were very happy that you joined. Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone. You can write to us at info@avaali.com, or you can also get in touch with us through our website at avaali.com. So in case if you have any questions, any further questions, you can always write to us. We would be happy to respond to you. Thank you very much again for joining us, and you have a wonderful day ahead.